Alright, now we need to get a little more complicated with our queries. So far it's been pretty easy. So here's what we want to do. We now want to find from our database, we want to find a list of all of the sales reps that have sold at least $100,000 worth of merchandise, at least in the whole time that they've been an employee. This is the 100 grand mark. So how could we do that? Let's look at our relationships view. And we know we're going to need a little bit about the sales reps. So we want to, in our final query, we probably want the first name and last name of those sales reps. But where would we get information about how much they had sold? Well, there's not really a revenue field here. We've got a sales reps table is linked to this orders table. And we could look up how the orders that were sold by a particular customer, and that's useful. And if we see this order details table, you can see that, oh, okay, well, there's a description of the item, but also there's the quantity that was purchased and the cost per item. And that's exactly what we're going to need, because revenue is simply, how many things you sold times the price that you sold it for, and so that's what's in this particular field here. So we know we need the sales reps table for first name and last name, and we know we need the order details table for quantity and cost per item. But you'll notice that the order details table and the sales reps table are not directly linked together. You've got to go through this orders table first. And so what we'll need is we'll actually need to bring in all three of these tables. Otherwise we'll get some funny results that won't make any sense and they'll be wrong. Because we've got to maintain this relationship. So let me show you what I mean. We'll create our query, and we'll bring in the sales reps table and the order details table. You'll notice that there's no relationship between these tables, and that's a problem. Okay, so if we were to run the query now, and even if we had done everything else right, we would get it completely wrong unless we also brought in the orders table. The orders table, you notice, maintains that relationship there. So in our final query, we want first name and last name, and we want a field called revenue or something like that. Or total sales, maybe. Here's how we do a field that will calculate our sales. What we're going to do is we will bring in and we'll type in a nice little formula, our revenue formula of quantity times cost per item. Now, one thing that you might notice, what happens if I misspelled this field down here? So quantity times cost per item. Let's say I forgot the M off of there. Now Access is going to say, oh, okay, well, you're doing a calculated field. It's got to have a new name over here because I don't know what to call it. And so it gives it a EXPR1, expression 1. We're going to change that in a minute. But let's say I just have quantity times cost per item. You notice that Access also has put these square brackets around there. That's because those are fields up here. But if we run that, it's going to bring up this enter parameter value. Now there's usefulness for actually doing queries like this, but that's beyond the scope of this class. Generally speaking though, what this means is that you've misspelled something. Oh, there's my go to sleep alarm. It means that you've misspelled something. You've got a field listed down here that's not up here in the query design window. And so, well, that just means we have a typo here. So let's go and see, before we rename it, let's see what it does. Okay, well, here's the first name and last name of the sales rep, and here's quantity times cost per item, quantity times price. Well, that's good, but we really want this to be all added up. We don't want to have Sue Hitchcock show up, a bunch of different times in this database, 132 times in this database, and then each, sales rep showing up so much. Plus, it doesn't really let us know if they're over that 100,000 mark. So the next thing we're going to do, well, let's rename this. We'll call this total sales. But now we need to add them all up. We need to aggregate them down the column. we've been adding up. You know, if we had, we could put quantity and cost per item down in our query design window. We could run this and we could say, oh, okay, well, 66 at 345 per item. Oh, okay, if we multiply those together, you know, we actually get, oh, that value. That's what we're doing. We're kind of doing math across this record. You know, for this particular one, we're taking our 23 times 595, and oh, there's our value. So we're just doing math across the row. If we want to do math down the column, though, for example, add up all of Sue Hitchcock's sales, then what we need to do is we need to add the totals row so we can add our aggregate function. For this total sales column, we actually want to, instead of just grouping by distinct, you know, values there, we want to add up or sum up all of the values for the combination of first name and last name. And now if we do that, we can see, okay, here we go. Now we're aggregating all of our sales reps, and we can now see which one of them has the most sales. So let's go and now add our criteria so that we only want to include those that have strictly more than $100,000 in sales, and we'll then sort it in descending order. There we go. So it looks like Dwight Schrute is our top salesperson with 169,000 and change in total sales, and we've got some other, another good salespeople who are over 100,000 in this database. And there's our total sales field. Even though that field doesn't actually come from the database, it's what we've called that field. We'll save that one as query 3.